You're listening to Forever Fierce with Catherine Grace O'Connell, only on LA Talk Radio.
Welcome to Forever Fierce. I'm Catherine Grace O'Connell, and we are back here in studio in Los Angeles. It's been a little while that we've been in studio as we have been busy on the road and busy making plans for a big event coming up. But for today, I'm really excited to introduce my guest. Kim O'Hara is now a Forever Fierce sister, and Kim is the author of the book, Kicking Abuse in the Ass. She is also has a website and a whole writing program that we'll be sharing today that really helps women write from the inside out. So delighted to welcome you to the show, Kim.
Thank you for having me. This is amazing. I love what you do, and I'm so grateful to be here.
Thank you. Well, we're delighted to have you and to really begin diving into your story. So Kim is a midlife woman, and like so many women out there, has gone through this process of reinvention and also waking up at midlife. But let's start back. You know, your story now, this story, Kicking Abuse in the Ass, really takes you back to what happened when you were a child and how that experience was repressed, suppressed, and really came up at midlife and took you on a new trajectory.
Well, I think for women in our generation, and men too, for all intents and purposes, we were taught that we keep the secrets in the home. We don't talk about what's going outside. Everything looks like the perfect, happy facade, small town, little cute family. And meanwhile, there's stuff is happening within your home that are now your secrets. And you're taught to soldier on. And I believe as a very young child, when the abuse was happening, there's disassociation and there's ways that you learn to cope so that you can be almost two people. You get almost like split. And you're the child that deals with what happens in your home, and then you're the child that goes out and behaves like nothing's happening. And then you bring that lack of authenticity into the rest of your life as a teenager, as a young adult. For me and for many people that deal with trauma, drugs and alcohol were an easy solution because they just numb you. You know, I remember I just wanted to be eviscerated. I just wanted to disappear. I didn't want to cope with anything. And then as I got older, like you mentioned, it just hit a point where that inner child, that little child, which I talk about in the book, was just not going to have it anymore. She needed to be honored. She was having temper tantrums, and she wanted to be heard, and she wanted me to have a voice as a woman. And it's like, well, what is that voice? Who is that person? And I had to stop hiding.
Stop hiding. That's an interesting one. I think many women out there, I know I can relate to that. So many of us are hiding in this false story that keeps us from the real story and the healing story.
Right. And we get scared that our real story is either not good enough because of perfectionism, so we procrastinate. I believe there's this whole process, right? So we have the fear, and then we have the procrastination, and then we go into the intuitive sense, which is, oh, something's starting to be loud in my head telling me that I can be more, I can do more, I can reach more people. I actually have a voice. Sometimes we can take action on that, sometimes we can't, and I think we can take action on it more if we are able to surmount perfectionism, because as women, we want to be perfect.
As women, we definitely want to be perfect. And you use some language around there that there's this fear, but there's also like fear that we may not be good enough, but there's also fear that our story is so shameful that it's better if we just lock it up in here and we keep this facade on and we keep pretending. And then oftentimes the universe takes care of that for us.
Right. I talk about this in the book. When I was 21 years old, I was partying with my dad and his girlfriend, and at the time I was married, and she cornered me in the bathroom and said to me rather drunkenly, your dad told me the other night that he had abused you. And I just remember looking at her, and I know every part of me knew that was true. And I made that decision in that key moment that I was never going to be that girl. That was not going to be my story. I was going to be a movie producer. I was going to be famous. I was going to be successful. I was going to win an Oscar, and no one was going to ever know. And that worked.
Until it didn't.
Until
Until it didn't.
everything came crashing down, and then nothing was good anymore.
So let's talk about that. So you were 21, and then you came into the golden, Hollywood era. Then making movies, like you said, you were a screenwriter, you were a producer, and you were working with some incredible celebrities and everything. And like you said, got into that world, and then that all came crashing down. So let's tell that story.
Okay.
And
yeah,
then really
sure.
how you had that wake-up call
Sure.
and the truth came through.
Right. Well, it's interesting. My dad, who was my abuser, was still alive at the time, and I was starting to have my daughters. And this is another story. He had come to visit in San Jose, where we were living, and he had just inadvertently left Rhode Island and just decided to come here to San Jose. I think he knew he was going to die. And I left him alone with my 8-month old daughter to go to the mall, like most mothers. We need anyone to give us 10 minutes. I think I had to go buy a bra or something. And at the mall, I had one of the most colossal anxiety attacks I've ever had. I just knew, and I hadn't faced the abuse at all. So I had to get back to that house immediately. And the minute I got back, I grabbed her, and I knew in that moment I had stopped the chain of abuse. If I had not been able to listen to that attack, without even knowing subconsciously why, who knows how many times he could have babysat. And then, of course, the universe or whatever you believe in stepped in, and he died a week later.
Interesting.
Abuse has stopped in my lineage. I have worked hard to stop it.
So basically you had this, like you said, this moment where you're
Right.
out there, you've got a panic attack. There's
Right.
something deeper happening inside of you saying, warning bell, there's something going on.
Right.
And then you had this wake up call inside going, wait, this happened to me. Now you talk a lot about intuition. You call yourself an intuitive book coach.
I do.
So let's, connect those two. What is the importance of intuition and women tapping into that intuition, and how do you bring that into your work?
My book coaching. Any woman that comes to me that wants to write a book and is confused or overwhelmed or thinks they have a million different stories, they just haven't been given the permission to really listen to that deeper voice of what they want to tell. And often, well, actually not often, every time they work with me, we sit for 5 hours and they just talk. So it's like a hardcore writing therapy session to a large degree, except they're just giving me stories and narratives and I'm just typing. And they find through that process of just hearing themselves and having that free voice what the real story is deep down that they haven't actually been facing. And most of them will, say to me after, I've just told you things I've never told anybody before, but knew I had to tell somebody. And so there's, I think, something about the journey that I've been on and the rise and fall that I've had in my life that gives me that ability to really see people and ask the right questions and feel into where they intuitively need to go.
And then what about intuition for you? How has it really helped you empower you and trust yourself?
Well, I've always had it, and it's always been there. Every woman has it. It's just I've had to keep making mistakes and keep taking risks, falling in love, falling out of love, building a company when I didn't even know who was going to pay the bills next month, taking risks in so many different areas of my life each time, and saying it's okay if I fail. It's okay if I fail, because every failure is going to teach me. That's built my intuition to the point where sometimes I don't want to hear it. I'm like, stop! I want to like that person, or I want to go do that. The little kid inside of us is like, I want to do that. But the intuition says, no, you know exactly where you need to go.
I think that's really powerful to get a woman to listen to that inner voice. Like you said, we all have that voice, but inside of us, deep inside, the voice of our heart,
Right.
the voice that's really a voice of truth.
Of the narratives.
So let's talk a little bit about, you make a lot of videos, and in your videos you talk about your life as a screenwriter and as a producer and how you use what you learned in that to really help people craft their story.
Yes.
So share with the audience. We have
Sure.
many women out there who are looking to share their story, but they don't have any idea where to begin.
They don't know where to begin. A lot of my clients that work with me have these wonderful stories, but they don't have the writing skills or abilities to put them into scenes. Movies are all scenes. Books are also scenes. They're all like mini vignettes of scenes, especially memoir and self-help, which is what I work mostly in. And so a woman will tell a story, and I'll say, here's a way to just do dialogue. Here's a way to put us in the moment. Tell us what the kitchen smelled like. Explain what your mother looked like. What were you wearing? What was that moment that you had in the car before you left? And they don't realize that they can sink into those moments, and those moments are the vulnerable moments that we as a reader, because we're writing books for ourselves, but ultimately we're writing books for the reader. Just like we make movies for ourselves initially, but we're really making the movies to entertain an audience. And the reason why I left movies and went into books is I felt that movies I wasn't able to be a healer in the movie business. I was just an entertainer. And now I feel like I can help people entertain readers, but also heal them, give them direction, show them where they could go with their story. So a lot of people don't know how to do that, and that paralyzes them. They say, well, I don't know how to do a scene. It's not that hard to teach someone to do that.
Well, I think it's really helpful what you just said. We talked about before the show, there are two elements that hold people back from going in and diving in to tell their story or write their book. Fear is one, certainly, and overwhelm, or that paralysis, like you said, is too big, it's too much, where do I begin? But if we break it down, clearly books are by chapter, right? And movies are by scenes. So we start in this scene, and I believe it was maybe one of the videos you shared, just get it all out there and then hire a coach or an editor, help you drill it down. Like, put all the words down there, all the stories, but someone can help guide you to really what's the jewel in that.
Right. What's the narrative, and what's the flow of it, and what we talked about writing prompts before, we got on the radio here, and I often will say to clients, that story might not serve the reader, but you need to write about that, because clearly this is something you need to heal, either this relationship with a child or a relationship with a friend. And then I'll give them a writing prompt, and a writing prompt something like, you're going on a road trip with a friend and you're stuck in the car together for 12 hours. You're finally going to tell them what you feel about X incident. What's playing on the radio, and how would you start that conversation? And it gives them the freedom to have that voice to do it. Amazingly, that piece of writing ends up being one of the best parts of the book.
So it really gives them, like you said, a prompt, but also a frame for sort of a conversation. Right. Can you write a whole book that way? Could you, working with somebody, give them, say, 12 writing prompts that would sort of outline their story, and have this prompt be this chapter and this prompt be this chapter? It sounds like a kind of quick and easy way to write a book.
I've investigated that. It
doesn't work because it's not linear. It's not necessarily a linear process. I'm thinking, well, that could be interesting. That's a quick and dirty way to get to a book. But
they usually do that with someone else, and then come to me and go, "Oh my God!"
Okay, that didn't work so well. So share with me. You said your goal right now. You have written your book. Your book came out in March.
Right. It's on Amazon.
It's on Amazon, so it is Cooking Abuse in the Ass. She is Kim O'Hara, a brutally honest memoir, which is true, and then Healing Women Through Their Words is your workshops. But you want to now move really from one-on-one coaching to one-to-many. So please share with that, and how women, if they want to work with you and start tapping into sharing their story and getting that down, how does that work?
Well, I have private clients that I'm going to continue to serve because there's women that really want to work one-on-one with me, and I honor that. But I was finding that there were women that were coming to me that were not 100% ready to make that first leap. I mean, my program is 18 weeks, and you go through 2 drafts. So you have to be fully committed to every week delivering a chapter. And then you have to be fully committed to 6 weeks after that doing a second draft. You end up with a book that's almost publishing ready, but that's a commitment. And some women are not able to go that, even men too, because I have had a couple male clients. So what I created was a product that's going to be available soon, October 1st, called What is an Outline? And it's basically breaking down what it is that you understand that needs to have a book purposeful and passionate and organized. because I believe that we get out of the overwhelm and the fear when we're given tasks. So as women, like, we could sit there and go, oh my God, I can't commit to Kim's 18-week book program. I'm just gonna not do anything for another 5 years. I'm gonna get into a lot more pain, and then I'm gonna come like crawling back when I'm feeling even worse, right? I wanna prevent that from happening. So I'm saying, if you do this, video, this what is in an outline video, you'll start to be able to write down incidences in your life, do the writing prompts, kind of like we're talking about, start to get it down on paper, and then all of a sudden it's going to be like, oh, that wasn't so bad. Maybe writing the book isn't so far away than I thought. Bridging the gap for thousands of people, yeah.
It sounds more like baby steps to get you where you want to go versus the other program that I felt initially.
Just dive in.
Yeah, where you dive in, but then sometimes, like you said, then it becomes overwhelming, and this is too much, and I can't commit to this, and we all know life happens in there. So this sounds like a little easier, gentler way.
Right.
Now, is there anything of accountability in this program? Any way to keep the women? The other one, obviously, every week this is due, and they have to do this. The other program, is it on their own, or are you?
It is.
Okay.
It's about an hour and a half. I mean, I just shot it yesterday, so I haven't timed it, but it's a lot of content. It's 3 chapters, and I urge people to go back through it a couple different times. That's going to take them only so far. After that, they can come to me and do a private outline session, or they can sign up for the book coaching program. And I feel like a lot of people, after they do this class, will feel more ready to they won't have that same overwhelm. But the accountability is, and I always urge people to reach out to me or email me or say, hey, I did your, I hope people do this. I took your course, and here's what's come up for me. I'm very clear to people, you can't send me your whole story because I'm not gonna be able to read it, but I am there to offer support and guidance. Like, you've given your time to thousands of women when you went through what you were going through with your, your disease and everything. I want to do the same. So if people want to email me and say, hey, I had this experience come up while I was doing your course, I'm happy to have that dialogue.
That's beautiful. I love that you said that. And before we got on the show, you shared something that you were at a workshop recently, and it was John Demartini. I'm gonna mess up the name here. But what he said about service, I think that's really, really important, and it kind of gets us outside of ourselves.
Right. It was an event called First Tuesday. I'm forgetting the name of the founder. It's Marcy, I want to say Klein. I might not be correct about that. But she holds these incredible, intimate events, and she had John Demartini come, and the guy's like a master of dealing, with working with service and money. And yeah, he was talking about, you are not serving your highest good when you don't believe that you have the right to reach 1,000 people and give them products and services that can help them with your teachings. If you stay on one-on-one coaching only, then you're really not servicing the greater good.
I think that's fantastic. And then did you come back with the, well, what about money? I don't want to be in this for money or something. Because I think that's a really important thing that I think a lot of women have that hang up. I have to, because we're kind of raised to give, right? As mothers, you're raised to give and not necessarily learn the value of that time. So there's a balance in the two, right? So share that part of the conversation.
Well, what I wanted to add to that just came up for me was, and I'm probably going to shoot myself in the butt with this because hopefully I won't end up doing this in the future, but I've been to some of those events where women and some men, coaches, will get up on the stage and they'll be like, teaching you or inspiring you, and all the conversation is really designed to sell you their product, which then at a certain point they will tell you that if you're one of the first 100 people to race to the back of the room, you can get their $597 product for $197. And I sit there and I watch the herd of people run back, and I think they just bought something that they are never going to open. They think it's like some dream that they're opening up. And I never want to be, and I'm not putting down those type of coaches because they have every right to serve the way they're serving. But that's what holds me back sometimes from serving 1,000 people, because I'm like, I don't want to be that like.
Yeah. So there's a balance between the two. It's important to serve and important to give, but it's also important to receive, because we really can't serve and give.
No, unless we're making an income.
If we don't
have to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like you said, you jumped and you didn't really have a safety net, but you have to charge for what you do.
Absolutely.
In order to actually give.
Yes,
part of that back.
Yes, and I know that women. I was at an event this wonderful event for a coach called Carrie Murphy, and she had a coach there. And I hadn't met this woman for more than 6 minutes, and I told her what the investment is for my private one-on-one 18-week program. And she immediately, having only known me for 6 minutes, went, "You are charging not enough money. You need to charge more money for the gifts that you give, so you can keep going. Don't you have young daughters? Aren't you a single, going through the whole thing?" And I was like, yeah, I actually, she gave me permission, and I thought, what part of me wasn't doing that?
There's that resistance internally, whoa, I can't do this, and we have to question that resistance and that inner voice and connect with really what's real and what's best for ourselves as well as others.
Right. Yeah. Right. One thing I wanted to say is about the speaking out and standing up for yourself and having a voice is with the abuse, you're taught to not say anything, right? So then I learned to speak as a movie producer loudly and very angry. I was always really pissed off at everything, right? And then what's a better role to play than a movie producer? So you could just yell at everybody on set all day long and then hate them when you get home. So I had to learn how to have a voice and be in kindness and be in gratitude and be in compassion and empathy, but still also not take crap from people, still also have really firm boundaries. I had to learn no is a sentence. No is a complete sentence. And we weren't able to say that when we were being sexually abused. We were not able to say no.
Boundaries go away in an instant. We have to learn to rebuild healthy boundaries when that happens.
Yes. So that's an important thing. And I think for me, for a long time, the no was messy. And now the no is complete. And I don't know about you, but I have a lot of people that support me emotionally, physically, and I need them to remind me of what my path is.
So share with me, let's go back a little bit.
Sure.
When this whole experience happened for you, you talk about, like I said, coming to Hollywood and screenwriter and producer, and then all of that is falling away. And at the same time, all these memories are coming up, and you got to deal with it. So I really want to get into what was going on inside of you at that time, and how you got through that, and how you got not only through that to the other side to help other people through this process.
Sure. For me, it was one dream. So it was nothing and then one dream. And I was separated from the father of my children, and I had 100% custody just for that. They were so young, we were just figuring out what to do with them at the time. And I woke up and I had this dream, and I remember having that feeling of going, no, God, no, I have to deal with this. There wasn't even a moment or a second where I thought that's not true, because it was time. So I immediately went to a therapist who had been a couples therapist, and said, well, you didn't save our marriage, but maybe you know someone that can help me with this. And she found me this unbelievable therapist who I do talk about in the book. I do talk about therapy in the book. And she helped guide me through. There was that phase of flashbacks and all the memories coming all of a sudden, because you open the box and now all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I don't know if I'm ready for this. And now that it's been 4 years, I can say that a friend of mine said to me the other day, and you said this before we started, it's never really going to be gone. It's always going to be there. But I've learned to turn it into a strength and an asset. I'm a very powerful, very strong, very opinionated, loving woman. And I feel like because I've had to go through such hell to get there, I can own that. I can own that. And each year I'm on this earth now as a survivor, I feel like I've really just started living.
And how has writing helped you in that healing process?
Well, I wrote this book, and I didn't hire a coach, so it took me forever, and then I realized I had to do what I tell my clients, so I did go to an editor who helped me get to the finish line. When the book was done and it was published, which was in March, and I did a couple book signings, I was like, okay, I'm all done, I'm all healed. I'm ready to heal other people. I've already written 2 more books. 2 more books since March. This one took me 2 years because the floodgates have opened. And I realized, and you know, I don't know how many books, you know, you've written a book, right?
I haven't. I keep being asked, it's
Oh,
coming.
we
It's
have to
coming.
get
It's
you
coming.
writing
Yes.
a
It's
book.
coming. I have not
How
written a
did
book,
we-
but it's
how
coming.
did
I know we haven't.
okay.
Yeah. It's all happened so fast, but a book is coming, guys. And maybe it'll be with
people
Kim.
will
Yeah.
read your book. But you are of the ilk too, that when you write your first book, you'll be one of those people that then writes 7 books. I say this to clients all the time. I'm like, you are that person, that 7-book person. You know, you meet these people like, how do they just keep writing book after book? It's like, I did this book, and then all of a sudden I was like, but wait, there's also the book about after you've come to terms with it. And then there's the book where you're like kind of laughing about certain things that have to do with it. And so
Almost like the film, you know, the
Yeah.
progression in a film, like you said, all the different parts of the film. So take me into your inner world. Take me into that process. You're starting to write this. All of these memories are coming up and coming out, because as women out there start this process, what can they expect? Obviously, everyone's different.
Sure.
What can they expect on the inside through that healing process? Up and down, you know, what's that emotional inner landscape?
There were a lot of dark moments where I did doubt whether it was true. And there were moments where I thought, who cares? Like, what am I writing this crap for? Can't I go write like a comedy movie? Can't I go write like a sing? And right when I would think that something would happen in my life that would be funny or would be give some levity, and I'd be able to add that to the book, my daughters would do something really amazing. And so while I was writing about the past, I was also able to bring in experiences that were happening to me in the present, and that taught me that I was a healer and a teacher. And it could be a memoir, but it could also be self-help. So throughout the entire book, each section, whether it's spirituality, sexuality, parenting, money, sexual abuse, touches every corner of your life. There are writing prompts through the whole book that literally show the reader what I wrote about to get me to write that chapter.
Yeah,
So that really takes them into that like inner world. Like I've shown them like, here's what I was thinking about that day in that cafe while I was wondering what the heck am I doing with my life.
So if we have women out there right now who want to write a book and they're looking at a blank sheet of paper right here, right now. So direct them, like, what would be the first step they would do?
The first step is they take a Post-it and they write on it, Kim says I'm a writer, and they put it somewhere, either on their vanity mirror or somewhere in their house. They need to know someone out there has got their back and says, you know what, you are a writer, and then they have to believe it. The second thing that I suggest that they do is they just start writing about anything. It could be that day, it could be something that happened at the supermarket. They have to get through it and start accumulating pages, right? So if you're not working with a coach or someone that you've outlined with, because it's better to have an outline because then you know where you're going, if they want to just start feeling what it's like to get that page full, it's not journaling so much, it's more like trying to create a moment so it has more structure and narrative so that they can learn how to be storytellers. Because like nobody wants to read our journals. I'm sorry, my journals are boring. It's the same crap over and over again. But sometimes out of those journals I'll have written a scene.
There's jewels. So I think you tapped into something really important. It was, again, in one of the videos that I watched that you did, and you said, you know, women say, I'm not a professional writer. Oh, I'm not a writer. Right. And you're like, what do you mean? You open a restaurant and you say I'm a restaurateur, but you haven't sold any food, but you still call yourself that. So how important is it for us to change our dialogue, change our confidence, and write from a space of, yeah, I've got a story. I'm a writer.
Exactly. I think that, you know, I know for me to write this book coming from a world of talented people and also wanting to make books into movies, fiction is really, you know, there are some fiction. I mean, I've written a couple of fiction books that I'm never going to show anybody, you know. It's the real deal. You can't compare yourself to fiction writers when you're you. You can't be, you know, I'm not going to be Chris Cleave or someone that I highly admire when I'm doing my memoir self-help book. But nobody can talk about me like I can talk about me. And nobody can recount my life like I can. And nobody can own that. Brenda Euland wrote a book, So You Think You're a Writer. I think that's the title of it. And she says in that, no, at the end of the day, nobody has your voice. So that in itself gives you the permission to write what you're going to write, because no one else can write what you're going to write. Nobody.
And as you said, we tend to compare ourselves to that tiny percentage that gets the book advance and all of that, the Brene Browns or whatever, who are wonderful and fabulous. But there's a million other wonderful books out there. So we want to not start from that space. Start from right here.
Right from your story, because you don't know where that's going to go from, and you don't know who you're going to touch. I mean, we talk about service. And if you have a story and you have the desire to write a book, you are not serving other people by holding that story inside. And we were talking about this before we started. Jane Fonda was on Norm Macdonald.
Yes, we love Jane Fonda.
Love Jane Fonda. And she was talking about books that have radically, like, she said, made her a different person, which I've never heard anybody talk about books affecting them that profoundly until I saw that last night. I was like, oh my God, she went 100% there to what I haven't even said yet. Like, and I'm going to say that to people now. Books will radically change your life. I don't know if you've ever read a book that's radically changed
many,
your life.
many. And I think there's even an image of you maybe on your blog where you're talking about being curled up as a young girl with like going through like 30 books or something.
Right.
That was me. I was the little girl at the library card. I'd like be stumbling out with this huge, stack of books, and I couldn't wait to get through them. I lived through other people's stories, and they were life-changing. But you also talk about something else that made me remember something else that you talked about. You were almost escaping through those stories, but then not diving into your own story.
Exactly. Yes.
So they serve us, but
I mean, they served me, but I think I became a movie producer because it was easier to write stories or produce stories about the alcoholic, but I couldn't look at my own situation, or write a story about disenfranchised youth, but I couldn't look at my own situation, or reunions of people, but I couldn't have any reunion with my own heart or my own self or come to terms with anything. And so I think movies were a way to escape. I mean, absolutely.
Do you find a connection to what you were drawn to as an escape that also mirrored something in real life?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, drugs and alcohol, for starters. Going back to high school, I made a movie about a high school reunion 20 years later. No one actually goes to the reunion. It's the day before, which I thought was interesting. And it was all these, it was basically about what these people didn't become.
Oh.
So that's really powerful, that disappointment of like, I didn't become what I thought I was going to become. What do I do now?
Oh, high school. We should probably not. That's a whole another show. Going back to high school, and especially as a young woman, what you think about yourself, so many projections onto us. So there was something else you shared. I want to get a little bit into the personal story. When you were in Hollywood, you talk about sort of being attracted by all the glitz and the glamour and the outer stuff. And then you said, and I don't remember the words exactly, but sort of selling your soul. Like at some point you realized, and that was part of your wake-up call. So I'd love for you to share what was that internally, what was going on, and how did that really serve you in the end?
Right. I grew up as the little girl who, did Oscar speeches in the shower, and I know that there's a lot of people that do that. And so I went into it for, I think, initially the right reasons, because I love stories and books, but then it became this whole validation of self. So if I just get to a certain level, then I'll be real enough and I'll be seen enough. And yet, really, I'd have premieres for my movies, and someone would say, so you're the producer, so you're going to introduce the movie. And I go, introduce the movie? I'm not going to introduce the movie. I can't speak in front of people. And I'd write on an index card, this is a movie I've lived and breathed for 2 years, and I can't even think of one thing to say about the movie. I can't remember who I'm supposed to thank. I'm frozen. I'm not like that anymore. Now I'll just get up and, sometimes I'll prep, sometimes I won't, and I just talk and I'm fully authentic. So it trapped me in an inauthenticity and a fear of self that I wasn't able to break free from. And today I have a contentious relationship. Several of my clients are writing books. One in particular who's actually going to start making a movie about her book. And she said that because I was a movie producer, I helped her see the vision of that. And a part of me goes, oh, am I going to go back there one day? But I have to go back there as me now, with a soul and with a heart and a sense of self.
So you feel that you were sort of building this facade, like you said, and then it came crashing down, and then you had to really get real with what was underneath that whole material.
Yes.
Which I think is really common, and I think many of us can relate to that.
I worked at Trader Joe's for 6 months. This is on my website. I talk about this. And I was so devastated, you know, that people were going to come in that had been in the movie business, or parents at my daughter's school were going to come in. And here's the craziest thing. Women would find me at Trader Joe's and pull me aside and go, how are you doing it? How are you working this job? Like, how did you get divorced? How did you do it? Like, they thought I was like so strong. And I'm thinking, I'm making $11 an hour stocking meat. Like, how can you think this is the mecca of anything? And yet it was one of the most profound jobs I've ever had, because I really had to get into this community of people that had one purpose. It was like a film crew. If you think about it, we had to produce this event. I just realized that, this event, and we were all, and the people there were so good. There was a man who had lost his infant son, who was also worked a lot of the shifts I worked. And I was having crazy anxiety attacks when I was working there, like the kind that rip up through your chest and go into your throat and lock up your jaw. And the register line would be like 20 people long, and I'd be in the middle of having one, and I'd be like, and I'd just look at him and I go, you have to cover me. And I'd go in the bathroom and I'd do breathing techniques and I'd sob for like 5 minutes, and I'd come back and we'd like fist bump. And he'd have moments too where he needed a hug. Like, and we never taught, like, we just knew, he knew a little bit about the abuse, but we just had that moment where we were like, I got your back.
Well, I think you bring up a really interesting point that kind of takes us in a little different direction, and I want to kind of go two directions from this. I want to pick up on your autoimmune, because I think you talking about the throat and the voice, I think that's really important. But I also, at midlife, like you just talked about something that's really real. You were forced from this world of glamour and glitz into a reality, into taking a job at Trader Joe's, which is, it is a reality of midlife, because there's so little opportunity for people out there. So I think that's really important. I really appreciate you sharing that story, and I think many people can relate to that out there.
I have had women that have been looking for a job for a while say to me, I just don't know what to do. And I'm like, have you applied to Trader Joe's? And they've gone, well, I don't know.
I can't do that.
And I'm like, why not? Like, so yeah, I think you need to dive in, to be fearless and dive in and be willing to do that.
Well, and put your ego aside.
And also, like, I was on independent movies, so I wish I could say that I had a lot of glitz and glamour. I didn't have trailers and expense accounts and all that. Oftentimes on those movies, we were dealing with $1 million budgets. They were very small. So being at Trader Joe's felt kind of like it, because it was like the grind. But it still was, the dream had been shattered of getting to that, like, housekeeping deal at Paramount or whatever. But in terms of the Achalasia, that happened after.
So let's tell people what that is, first of all. So I know in researching Kim, she ended up with an autoimmune disease that attacked the esophageal area. So just so let people know, just to start, because they're not, most people are probably not going to know what that illness is.
One in
100,000
or 200,000 people. It's very, very rare. And I do believe it is.
So what is it called again?
It's called Achalasia.
Achalasia.
And one day I just woke up and I couldn't swallow. And I would start to eat. I would try to eat food, and it would take all day to get a bagel down, and I didn't know. And I went 9 months without dealing with it. I thought I just had anxiety, and I got down to about 105 pounds. And finally, my doctor said to me, "You're killing yourself. You're killing yourself by not taking care. You need to take action immediately." And then I woke up, like something. It's almost like I needed to have this physical ailment come for my body to go, I
wake up. Wake up. Take care of yourself. Love me.
Stop destroying yourself. You can stop destroying yourself. And so I went to there happened to be the top Achalasia expert in like America was over at UCLA Santa Monica, who sailed boats with my gastroenterologist. It was so random. It was like, and it all came together.
Divine intervention.
It was such divine intervention. And I was in surgery within the week. And it was a pretty intensive surgery.
I think that's a really important lesson, because I would imagine many women in our audience can relate. I know I personally can, to letting ourselves go. And even, the warnings get louder and louder and louder. Like you said, you're down to 105 pounds.
Right.
You have barely been able to eat.
Right.
But you're not going in to take care of yourself.
I'm not taking care of myself. I'm just moving on as if, just like the abuse. It was the abuse repeating itself.
It's to yourself.
You've been abused, and now you're doing it to yourself, because there's no one to really do it. You're taking on the role. I think we take on the role of, well, the people aren't there abusing us, because at the time I was not dating anybody. I mean, I don't date abusive people, but I wasn't dating anybody. I, for all intents and purposes, had things kind of were starting to go a little bit. I was substitute teaching. I've had this little trajectory, and I think inside there's that switch, because I still hadn't fully dealt with it. It was like, you're going to kill yourself then if you don't have someone to do it for you. And I like myself too much to do anything like active suicide or anything like that. So it's kind of like a subconscious way of destroying yourself.
Again, I think many women can relate to depriving themselves, be it, there's many eating disorders, all kinds of ways that we self-abuse when we are abused, and we turn it on ourselves. So how has writing gotten you from this woman who was in that state and using, like you said, drugs and alcohol and all kinds of whatever it was you did to self-medicate, to this more empowered space? How has writing been this bridge to the older you, this new, more empowered you?
Embracing that the writing is, that my journey is powerful enough, and owning that it has to be shared. So even though I'd like to say I have a daily writing practice, I don't. But when I make a commitment to write, I can burn out a book, as I've discovered since March, in a very quick period of time. And I found that when I have that intuition that now's the time to write, which is at least once a week, I sit down and do it, because I know that it's honoring me. It's honoring a part of me. I don't reach for the cookies, or I don't reach for the bad relationship, or I don't reach for the drugs, or I don't reach for the anger. I sit down and I put my butt in the seat and I see what's going to come out. And it takes the pressure off of me, because then I can see my story and I can say, oh, that's just what I needed to do.
And how has it helped? You talked about before when you were a producer and you just take that anger and you'd be putting it all over everybody else.
Yes.
How has that helped that? How has it helped your emotional well-being?
Oh, I think now I've realized that I have a whole range of emotions that I didn't realize were possible. They used to be so black and white. You're either like happy or sad. So it was like black and white thinking, right? You're either like down low or you're up super, like everything's so amazing, or oh my God, it's the darkest thing. And now there's so many emotions.
Shades of gray.
Oh my God, there's so many emotions in between. And I think that when you're able to tap in to all those different feelings on a daily basis, anger becomes not the prominent one anymore. It starts to become one of, and then you start to learn how to have healthy anger.
Yeah, there is healthy anger. There are healthy emotions and healthy boundaries. So you went through this process, and like you said, you wrote this book, and now 2 other books have come out.
Yes.
Because do you see it as peeling the layers? As you peel a layer, there's another layer underneath, and another layer underneath.
Yes. And I keep, the reason why I started writing the 3rd book was this past month of July, for some reason, was this epically long month. I don't know why, but I would wake up in the morning and be like, it's still July? And then I'd write about it, the fact that it was still
Groundhog
July.
Day?
Yeah, and then like something would happen, and then something else would happen that was really funny, or someone would know somebody, or I'd go on this really like weird date, or like my kids, all these things started to happen, and I just wanted to write it down because I thought it was really funny and tapped into the intuitive and kind of intense. And the next thing I knew, I had this whole book, and I was like, wow, now I have 2 more books, and I don't really know what I don't know what I'm gonna do with them yet. I probably should print them out and read them.
Good idea. Good idea. So our audience out there would probably love some action steps. What would be 3 action steps they can take today, tomorrow, whatever, right now, really, in their own world, to start beginning to open up and tap into their story and share their story?
Well, you talk about blogging, so it's not that hard to create a WordPress site and put up a blog and get out of your head there has to be anybody reading it. Just create the blog for you. It's really easy. I have a blog on my website. I don't blog on it as much as I should. And that's a good, so do that, do a Facebook post, do an Instagram story, do a YouTube video, do something and just say what you think. Just say what you feel, say what you
do workshops as well, and you also have, I believe, is it a weekly Facebook Live? Or you were
I-
doing them at one point?
I was doing interviews. I'll interview my clients when they're done with a first draft or second draft so that they can talk about it. I'm not doing the in-person workshops anymore. I'm doing the video product instead. But you can reach me at astoryinside.com. And then from there, you can go to my Facebook page, my YouTube page, where I'll continue to put up instructional videos. And I think that's it. I keep it pretty simple.
Simple is good. I think life is complicated enough, so simple is good. Well, thank you so much for being here, Kim.
you.
Thank you for, helping the women in our audience really to begin to tap into their story, the value of their story, and maybe starting to tell themselves a whole new, more empowered story.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you for being here, you guys. I highly encourage you to check out Kim, check out her book, Kicking Abuse in the Ass, and begin using some of those tools. Check out her website, watch her videos, consider using some writing prompts. That's a very common writing tool to just get you kind of starting moving forward, because in the end, you got to start, just somewhere, just start somewhere, because that piece of paper can look awfully blank, but just start somewhere. And your story has value. You have value. Like Jane Fonda says, I am relevant. Do you see me? So we are relevant. And thank you so much for being part of Forever Fierce and the Revolution. Thank you for joining Forever Fierce and the Revolution. And we'll see you again next week. Cheers, beauties. Stay fierce.